So today we are going to cover React hooks. Okay, so React hooks is, you can think it like you will be always be getting a question around React hooks. Okay, it is just the soul of React as we talk right now. Okay, so before explaining what all we will be covering, I want to go prior to 2018, or when React version 16 was launched. 16.8 was launched. Before that, there was two ways to create your component. Okay, so the first way was your using classes. Okay, and the second way was using functions. Okay, and when we talk about any UI application, okay, or any website that has to be interactive, okay, there are few things that uh, works in context of an application that we need to do, are they need to be interactive. Okay, interactive means that users should be able to interact with them. So first point is it should be interactive. Second point, like you can click on it and all those things. Second, you have to fetch data from, you have to get data from backend. Okay, so you have to get data from third party. Okay, and sometimes there are few applications where you have to access the actual DOM element, because React is basically an abstraction over your normal vanilla JavaScript and DOM. So what it does, it just optimizes all those things. But there are few features where you have to access the actual Java, element inside the DOM. So these three things were only possible using a class component. Okay, so before React 16.8, I think, if I'm right. So yes, before 16.8, you had only one way of creating component using classes, using JavaScript classes. But there was problem, like if I just pull out a code from here. It's not copied. Yes. Okay, I can write it for you also. Let me just copy it from here. Is it visible? No, it's not. It's not working. Let me just pull out a basic class-based component code. Okay, class-based counter, counter React. Okay, so if I want to give a example of it, so React, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Yes, if I create, copy this piece of code. Okay, then you can see if I have to add interactivity in this thing, then I had to use classes. So classes came with a lot of boilerplate. Like you had to use constructors, you had to use super, you had to understand this inheritance also, and you had to understand render, and you had to also understand where to put your state and where not. So they were in a way verbose. So it was pretty difficult for a beginner to get started with the React, to just give any element or any component any functionality. Okay, so because of that, these problems that we had to learn a lot while we were writing the class based component. So because of that, React developers, so the creators of React, what they did, they provided a feature named hook, so that these feature could also be used in your functions. Okay, and that feature is known as hook. Okay, so now you all understand what is the story behind of it. So the point is, initially only class, with the class based component, you had the feature of states, interactivity, and any kind of functionality could only be achieved using class based component, and functions were there for just the static content. But the point with the classes is that you need to understand a lot of different concepts so that you can use it. So that was difficult for the context of learning. So that's why they introduced hooks in React in the version 16.8, so that you can use these states and these three features: interactivity, getting data from backend, and accessing any element. So for every each of these things, they have introduced different hooks for functional components, so that you can achieve the same thing uh, using functional component. So there are few hooks that you should always study and are usually asked in your interviews. So if I'm talking about a functional component, okay. So if I'm talking about a functional component, so there are few hooks that you need to understand. The first and most important is use state. So I can classify these into uh, according to their behaviors, or what are their use cases. Okay, so for changing the state of it, because the whole React revolves around state. So there are two ways of setting the state or updating the state in React using hooks. These are, first is use state, and second is use reducer. Okay, so in today's class, we are going to understand these two. Apart from that, is your ref. Okay, these three, I will be majorly talking about these three things. Interactivity, for interactivity, you need to have event listeners, and to change the data, you have to use states. So to talk about states, you need to have use state, and to talk about your DOM elements, okay, you have to have a hook that name is, so to get access about of UI, basically UI access or DOM access. Here we have useRef hook, and to do any kind of third party interaction, or do any kind of thing that revolves around your life cycle. That means if a element is destroyed, or if the element is appear on the screen, so anything that is an extra thing that you need to do is usually set to as a effect, and that effect is achieved by use effect. So we are going to understand use effect also today, okay. And the fourth one is your performance optimization. Okay, so for optimization, we are going to understand useMemo. So these are few hooks. These are their functionalities. To update state, there are two: use state and use reducer, and both have their use cases. To access your DOM, there is use ref. A third, for doing any kind of making an API request, handling uh, your component according to its life cycle. Like when it is created, you have to fetch some data after that. If it is removed, then you have to send some log. All those kind of third party synchronization could be achieved using this effect, okay. And fourth one is optimization. When there is some costly operation that is going on, and you have to optimize that, you can use Memo for that. So these are the five hooks that were introduced, and there are more also, but these are the most important. And beyond these, there are two more. One that was kind of trying to help us to manage our state in a better way. So it could be similar to your Redux, but it is not exactly. uh, for a better state management, it is use context. So I will be covering use context in a different lecture. And for optimization, we have another one, use callback. So these are some of the hooks that were introduced. And apart from that, these are the most essential hooks that you all need to understand, okay. So starting with it, let's just start, and let's cover one after another, okay. So first of all, we are covering our use our state hook, okay. So for that, we will be firstly covering use state, okay. So let me just go over here, and let me just introduce you people with the use state, okay. So first of all, let me just create a simple create react app, and I will be creating a lecture 5 underscore hooks underscore course, and inside of that I will be doing npx create that tag. Okay, so npx create dash react dash app. Okay, I just need hooks, the name of it. So let it install. Meanwhile, what I want to cover is there is one more fact that you need to understand. There are a few caveats with these hooks also. Like with this, you get all the benefits of a class based component without its bad syntax. Okay, so there are a few things that you need to keep in mind, that every hook, as you can see on your own, starts with use. Okay, every hook starts with use. Second point, you can't use a hook inside a hook can't be used inside a loop or a nested function. So they can't be used in these two areas. So these are the two rules that you need to follow while using your hooks. Okay, because they will be giving you error on their own. Okay, understood everyone? So these are the two rules. Meanwhile, let's just wait for a minute, and I think it is installed. Okay, so I'm gonna open it from here. Yes. So now let's just start with our first hook, that is use state. Okay, so for that, what I'm going to do, I am going to convert my class based component, the first counter component, into a simple functional component that has state. Okay, so let's see how we can do it. So here we had a lot of code. Now let's see how we can do it. So for the purpose of it, I will be removing few things. So first of all, I will be removing, before that, let's just start simple doing npm just the npm start would work. Okay, ls. Okay, npm start. So just basically start our application, and after that we will be doing our changes. Okay, now meanwhile that is being done, I want to edit it to here, and let's just remove everything from our app, because I don't need anything. Okay, so just an h1 would work, I think. Hooks examples, hooks class. Okay, so now let's just go through the basic setup of it. So I will be creating components folder, and everything will be kept inside this thing. Okay, so for use state, I will be creating a to do use state example. Okay, for this, or for better syntax acceptance, it should be use state jsx, and I want to keep it uppercase. Okay, so there are few things that I want to add up to. You have an option of extensions. Okay, so you for snippets, you can have an extension name es7 react redux native snippets. It gives you basic snippets, so that you need not to write all the code. Okay, so coming to it, you don't need to look anywhere else. We have just the app.js, and this app.js is putting this h1 on the ui. Okay, now the next is, we have use state example .jsx, and coming here, you can just use a simple snippet rsce. with the RFC, it will be giving you a basic setup for it. Okay, basic component syntax. Okay, and now you can easily import it over here. Okay, so I just want to import use state example. Okay, now it's visible. So the example, when I talked about a class based component, we had a counter. Okay, it had state and it was just doing the increment thing. Okay, so we need to understand these things like extends, pro constructor, super, this dot state dot count. These many things I have to understand before writing a simple piece of code. So let's see how I can convert this piece of code in a easier manner. Okay, so I can easily do it using a simple. Let's just first of all write a simple counter. So for that, I will be using a paragraph tag and I will be using a simple count. And to use multiple lines, I have to enclose it into these empty fragments. Okay, now it's done. So as of now, count is not defined because I want to have count using a state variable, that is using useState. So useState helps us to declare variable that are going to change. If they are changed according to the useState function, then they will your UI will be re-rendered. Basically it will you will see the change. Okay, so initially I am going to put it 0, and useState gives you the result in the form of an array, so you can just easily refactor it into your variable as well as its setter function. Okay, so what is happening over here is I can just do count. Let's see what I did. Uh, to print anything, to add interactivity, you need state. Okay, and to work with state, you need a hook that is use state. So React gave us a hook that is use state, and you have to just pass the initial value. It will give you an array, and that array contains two elements. First is the state variable, and second is the setter function that can be used to change its value, and only it can change the value. Okay, and the special thing about our state variable is as soon as I change this, I call this function and change the count variable, then I can easily render the whole UI. Okay, so for that you just need to have a button, and you can just do the simple on click thing, and you can just directly do it over here also. So that I just want to do set count, and with this count plus 1. Okay, and what it does, increment, and let me just increase the size of it also. Okay, so with this let me just happen to it on click. On the on click, just want to call this thing set count, that is count plus 1. What happened to it? On click there is L, that is uppercase. Come here. So now it is changing the state, and whenever you change the state, your UI will be rendered or the function will be called again. Okay, so with this, as we compare with the class-based component, you had to learn these many of concepts, so you can replace it completely, and you can directly use your use state hook in your functional component, and you need not to understand your render and all those things. Okay, so that's the beauty of use state. Okay, so I hope you understood the case of use state, and you can have multiple state variable like this, and you can have multiple things like this. Okay, so let's just do a thing. Let's just add have a to do basic to do application through which we can just enter a task, or I just want to let's just add a simple list, and let just cut it also, create, read, update, or delete. Okay, so let's just add a simple basic to do application. Okay, so for that I have basic user example. With that I want to have another thing, that is useReducer. So let's just learn how we can handle complex states. So use state is used for handling a simple state. But as you saw over here, here we declared state using an object. Okay, and here we declare this state using an initial value, that is a normal value. Okay, so but whenever you have to work with complex state, like when you are getting data from a form, in those times working with a simple use state causes issues, like it will not cause any coding issues, but it will be causing you some writing issues. Okay, so that is the issue. So I come over here, and if I just rename it, so I'm doing RFCE. Let me just import this guy also. I'm going to uncomment this thing, and let me import. I use reducer. That's not being imported. Use reducer. Use reducer example. What is imported? Okay. Now let's just build a simple to do application with it. Okay. So for this, I need an input and few more things. Okay. So for that, let's just make it a bit complex. Okay. Let me just make it a bit complex. I will be adding a counter. Okay. So for that I will be adding the same piece of code over here. So I'm having counter. Okay, and let's just wrap it inside two braces. So this was the old example. Okay, so let's just do the same thing with use state, and then we will be able to understand how use reducer helps us do certain things. Okay, so now here is that thing. Okay, so now this was the code for our counter application. Now what I want, it is a simple basic counter. Now I want a basic mm, I have increment, decrement, and yes, this is one guy. Let's just have multiple buttons. Okay, so with that you will be able to understand the context. Button, and I want button that says decrement. Decrement. Okay, so on click equals to your uh, set count, that will be count minus 1. Okay, so with this you can easily see that I'm incrementing, here I'm decrementing, and I can also have different button, like this button also, that can increment by 5 and decrement by 5. Plus 5 minus 5. Set count on minus 5. Okay, that is decrement by 5, increment by 5. Okay, so we are having these many buttons, and we have their functions with it also. Okay, so we are changing these things: decrement, increment by 5, decrement by 5. Okay, You can do the same thing at one place also. Okay, that's where use reducer comes in. So use reducer is a different way of using use state. Okay, and it is majorly used for your complex state handling. Okay, it's use reducer, yeah. Use reducer. Let's just see how we can use use reducer also. So for that, you have to build a different function, and its name is reducer. Okay, reducer function, and it takes two things. It takes two things. First, an action and type and action. Okay, so let me just return your action. I'll be running the action only. Okay, so let's just go through a simple code for it. Mm, sorry, your state and action. The first statement would be state, and second would be action. Okay, let me just turn the state initially. Okay, so now I want to use my use reducer hook with it, and if I add it over here, it takes two parameters. It takes two parameters. Okay, so the first is I think is a reducer function, and second is your initial state. And what it gives, let me explain that thing. It gives you the state variable, and it gives you dispatch. Okay, so this would sound like your redux. Okay, so when you will be reading understanding or studying redux, at that time you will be coming across these terms: dispatch, reducer, action, and all those things. So I will be explaining all the things along the way. Okay, and so now if you are using dispatch, then there are a few things. So first of all, I don't want to add these things, set count and all those things. Let me just remove it, these functions, these changes that I'm doing at this point of time. Okay, as of now everything is working. So now what is happening over here is that use reducer takes a function and a initial state. It gives you that initial state, and it gives you a special function that's name is dispatch. Okay, so what was initially happening inside on click, you had the function and you have to call it accordingly. Okay, so now how you are going to do it over here. So we just need to go through this action. So I can just easily use it using a switch case where I can just pass the action, and then we had to match these. Okay, we have to match these. Just okay. So if my action is, let's just name these things. Okay, so if my action is increment, so then I just need to return state plus 1. Return state plus 1. If case is decrement, then return state minus 1. Okay, if it is increment by 5 by 5, then at that point of time I'm going to return state plus 5. Okay, now if it is increment by decrement by 5, then in that point I have to return it state minus 5. Include everyone, and how I'm gonna call it. Let me explain that thing also. So for that you have to use that dispatch thing, and for that you have to use your normal calling thing, and instead of and then that object you can just easily pass your action with the name of it. So here I just need to increment, so I will be passing increment. Okay, if I increment now, it's incremented. For here dispatch incremented. Okay, here dispatch is increment by what the name of that, increment by 5, increment decrement increment by 5, and here it is dispatch and decrement by 5. Okay, so let's see, are all these things working or not. All these things, this guy isn't working, so let's just see what we have missed. We have just put the space between it. So one thing that bugs sometimes in for the case of use reducer is you may have to do the string matching. That should be correct, only then your code would work. Okay, so if I increment it by 5, it will be increment decremented. So now you should be thinking that why not that part was used. You What is the advantage of use reducer? So before that, let me just reiterate it and let me just explain it again how your use reducer work. Okay, so what does use reducer do? It takes a reducer function and a initial state. Okay, so it takes two parameters. So first of all, it is going to give you the state variable so that you can send it to the UI, send it to the return, and it can send it to the UI. So you will be getting an initial value of 0. That is the first thing. This reducer thing encompasses two things. First, all the state changes are written over here. All the state changes that are there. Okay, so I should not be doing this thing. I should be using a simple default where I can easily return it. Return state. Okay, so my point was that with this, your all the state changes would be inside a same function. If you are doing any mistake, you can just directly see it. Okay, let me just add a few more features that will help you understand that how it could have been useful. Okay, let's see. What if I want to just tell the counter the value I want to increase it by. Okay, so let me just add that feature also. So if I have an input and I have a button also, increment according to user. Okay, so I have this button, and if I enter 10, then I click this button, then then this counter should be increased by 10 that I want. Okay, so how you are going to handle with the case of use reducer, that it makes this thing very easy, because if you want to add some more features, then you have to just change it over here. Okay, so that makes it easier, and if your state is an object, then it is also way easier. So let's just see how we can do it. So I have a button, and here is the input, and let's just first of all control it. So when it comes to any input type of thing, then you have to control it using your state. Okay, so that you can work with it. So I need to just import useState also for this. So initially it would be empty, and value equals to value, and your on change would be, you will be getting e, and your set val would become e dot state dot value. These kinds of things here you should always be using e dot target dot value. So at these points you should always be using our use state. So if I just click on it, I can type on it. Okay, now with this button, what I want to do is I want to increment according to the user. Okay, so with that, if this button is clicked and whatever is inside your, so just want to call your dispatch. Okay, now let's see how we can do this. Okay, because there were two parameters, state and action. Okay, and now what I want to do is I want to dispatch it, and I want to pass two things, a value as well as the action. So I can easily add it over here. I can just add another case for it, case increment user. Okay, return state plus, here I would be doing action dot payload. And now you need to change things a bit, but that would make sense. Okay, so now in dispatch here you have to pass two things. First is the value. You can just easily pass the value equals to val. Okay, and the type is equals to, sorry, payload basically, because these two has to match. And your uh, your type should also be passed, so that is increment user. Let me explain each and everything to you people. Okay, don't worry about it. Let me just close all of these buttons so that it is easier for me to navigate the code base. Okay, so let's just first of all see this piece of code. If you want to understand it, useReducer gives you the state variable. Okay, and it also takes a reducer function that we have to write, that will contain all the changes. Okay, so usually according to these things we just needed to pass just our uh, action. Okay, so in every switch case I'm just only checking the action. Okay, so what does dispatch do? Dispatch, whatever string or whatever thing you will pass will go to this second parameter. Okay, here we are passing a string, so it will be getting a string. Okay, and here I am passing an object, so it will be getting an object. So now I can just easily do the same thing. So if there is an action dot payload, so you need to modify it so that you can use it. So if you have action dot type, okay, so if you have action dot type, then this type will be passed here, and now it could be added, and this payload will be added from here. Okay, and if we talk about other event listeners also, our other handler functions, initially we were passing string, so now we have to pass an object with the key type. Okay, so now just do it like this, type with increment. So now what would happen, this dispatch will be called, or in other way, this dispatch is called, and this object is sent to this object action. And now when the switch case run, it will be checking this action dot type, so that is nothing but your increment function. So now your increment will be called and your state will be incremented. So in the same way we have to do the same thing for all of these things, but the major advantage is that all the state changes are at one place, so this will be giving you a feel of redux. Okay, so when we will be studying redux, then you will be seeing that we will be writing reducers all the way along, and we will also be using dispatches also. So it is another way of handling your state when your state become very complex. Okay, let me just update all of these things, and after that I will be uh, explaining all the things via demo. Okay, just a second. Let me just add the type over here, and here also just the type would work, because now you also need to have a user input. Next, coming over here, don't need to add it, and yes, let's just increment it. It is working. Decrement isn't working. Let me just check it why. Decrement increment by 5 is also not working. So now we have to do something like, what has happened? Let's just check it out. Console. A component is changing an uncontrolled input to be controlled. This is likely caused by the, there is a reference error. Use state is not defined. Okay, it is defined. Increment is working. Decrement is not working. Okay, so when I just pass the type decrement, when it is called, dev2 failed to load your source map, could not. Let me just reload it. Okay, there may be some issue with it. Localhost 3000. What's happening to it? Yeah. Huh. Now it is showing there may be some issue with the webpack. Doing increment and it is working. Now, if I open over here, if I go to my console, now it is working fine. If I decrement it, decrement is also working. If I increment by 5, it is also working. If I decrement by 5, it is also working. And if I want to increment by 56, so that one thing that I need to take care is that all the things are sent as string. So we need to convert any everything into simple number. Okay, so that there would be no issue. So increment is working, decrement is also working, increment by 5 is also decrement by 5 is also working, and increment by 20 is also working. You are getting 3. So the summary is, if you want to view all the things in one place, that use state and use reducers are used to handle your state of your application. And state, whenever state changes, your application or the component in which state is changed, it will re-render. Okay, so for handling simple states, they introduced use state. Okay, because that use state only took just the initial value of the state and gave you a function. With that you can write uh, send this this state changing function anywhere you want. Okay, but when it comes to your handling your complex states, okay, complex states like handling this kind of application where there are a lot of state changes, then it is better to put all the state changes logic at one place and calling according to your need. Okay, so for handling complex states, it is we usually use useReducer. Okay, and useReducer takes two things: the function that in where we have all the logic how to change your state, and second, the initial value of the state. Okay, so majorly wherever it is used majorly in the form. Whenever you have to take the data in the uh, all the fields of our form, then you are going to use useReducer. And if you are just working with the simple states, then you are going to use useState, because with that it is very easier, because you need not to define another function that is separate from it. Okay, so that helps doing it. Okay, so now our first part is done, that is around state. Okay, so now we have done with use state and use reducer. Okay, so these were first and the foremost hooks that were introduced in React so that you can work with state efficiently. And one more thing I want to tell you, that with the use reducer and use context, you can create a solution that is similar to Redux. Okay, and when you are using context and use reducer, the boilerplate code is also less. Okay, so now this part is nearly done. Let me just go to another caveat when it comes to use state. Okay, so whenever we are doing a simple state change, okay, whenever we are doing a simple state change, then there may be some issues. Okay, so let me just do it. Let me just do it. So for that, I would be using use effect. So I will be just firstly covering use effect, then after I'm going to do it. Okay. But as of now, we should be using our use state. Okay. As of now, I haven't explained you use effect, but for the sake of it, for the sake of this example, I'm using use effect's easiest version. Okay. So use effect is a let's just cover it a bit also. Okay. So as of now, I'm covering use effect. Okay, so use effect is one such hook. So how does use effect work? Okay, so use effect works something like this: console.log. I will be using the same example of use reducer also. I just want to add use effect to it, but before that, I just need to separate it so that you are able to understand it efficiently. Okay, so let's just go to our app.js, and before that, let me go to my use effect example dot jsx. Okay, so now let's just import it. Use effect use effect use. I did that thing RFCE. Yes, the snippet and a basic use effect example. Okay. So now let's just see how our use effect works. Okay. So for that, I will be reusing my use state example. Okay. So before explaining what is use effect, how it works, let me just go through it and let me just explain it efficiently. Okay, so use state would be used over here. Now let me just paste it over here. I would be requiring this piece. Okay, let us import, of course, our use state. Now we are having this count variable, and as of now we can just also remove it also. Use effect would also work. Let's just do some console.log and let me explain you a few things. Console.log, we may need that count. Okay, yes. I'm doing just a console.log component render. Okay, so or I can just do before. Okay, and here I can just add a simple console.log line. This would not be visible on the UI, but in render. Okay, just go over here and let's see how our code executes. I want to close it out. I reload it. one thing you see is that here your before is printed, then your in render is printed, then before is again printed, and in render is again printed. Okay, this is a strange behavior that React DOM gives you. Okay, so in the development version of as the strict mode was introduced, after that, when you are in development version, usually your every component is rendered twice. Okay, so it is rendered always twice. There is no bug, there is no issue, but it is always done twice. Okay, so that is one issue that you all need to take care of. Okay, okay. So now the next thing would be, what is the use case of use effect? Let me just include it and just do a simple console.log with it. Use effect. Use effect is basically a hook, and for the starters, it just take a function that it can execute. Okay, so I can just do console.log your in render after render. Let's see what is happening over here. So now if I increment, if I just reload it, let's see what is happening. So initially before was printed and in render was printed, and after that there is let me just remove the use strict, okay, or you all will be confused because this is an issue of use strict only. Okay, so let me just remove it so that this does not happen. Is an issue of use strict only. So now it clears your things. Okay, so that is the quirk of why I don't know why they are doing it, but it does not make sense. Okay, so now use effect takes a function and it runs it initially after first render. Okay, after your application is rendered, then only it is going to execute it, and by default at this point of time it is going to uh, again run it after every render. Okay, so I have multiple things like if I just import my useReducer thing. Okay, and if I add, just copy the whole of it, and if I come over here, I paste the whole thing, of course my reducer also, then I have to import it also. So use reducer. Huh. So here's the whole code, and if I just add my use effect with that function, and console.log a basic effect. Okay, and effect, and the next thing would be your between render, console.log between render. Okay, watch it very carefully. Okay, I want you people to watch very carefully how this use effect thing works. Before render. Okay, if I reload the whole code, let's see what are the things. So it's not render, it is render. So I'm just doing it render. Okay. Now let's see, simply reload it. Let's see what are the things that are happening. So as you see that when I am rendering this thing, the whole thing is printed on the UI. Then first of all, before render is printed. So that means your component function is executed, and then this part is executed, and after this, your effect will be executed. So effect runs, effect executes, the function inside of it after first render. Okay, after render, that we can say. Okay, so whenever I just render it, the last part will be your effect. That is the whole thing. Now moving on, let's just see, if I just type h, what would happen? So as soon as I typed h, your before was printed. If you want to see it again, before between effect, I want to clear it out. Now I want to type h. So with that, what has happened, that I was controlling the state of this input using my state variable. So as soon as my state changes, your whole component will execute again, or your UI is rendered again. So whenever there is a rendering, then with this case, your use effect will be run at the last point of time. Okay, so that is how your simplest explanation of use effect is. Okay, so it runs after every state change or after every render. Okay, this function type. Okay, the basic type. Okay, so what if I just want it, what if I just want to have it in a different way? Okay, so what if I just want it to only run only once in its lifetime? Okay, how can I do it? So of course I can do it only once also. How can I do it? The use effect, there are two options. There are two options. First is with function and without anything else. Second is adding an empty array. So it will be only executing the function after render only once. So it was after every render, and it will be rendering only once after first render. Okay, after first render only. Okay, it will not bother how many times you change the state. So let's see how we can do it. So as you can see, before, between, and effect is done. And if I clear it, if I press on the increment, then also your use effect will not run. Decrement, increment by 5, decrement by 5, increment according to answer, will it will not again run. Okay, now can there be more use cases for it? Yes, there could be. I have covered the case for n number of execution. Here I have covered the case of only one execution. Now there can also be a case of conditional execution. But if I just want to call the function inside of it when only count is changed, like let's just say whenever a user comes online, then I want to send something to the server. Okay, so that piece of code I want to write. Okay, so for that I will be again be using use effect, and here let's just say whenever count changes, only then I want to execute it. So for that I can simply put count over here, and now if I just copy it, so it will render the first time. Okay, it will render the first time. Okay, plus whenever the dependency changes. The point here is whenever the count will change, the effect will execute. Let me just explain it again. So for the first render, before, between, effect ran. For the first render, effect ran. And if I just do anything around this, there is no effect executing. But what if I just press increment? At that point of time, your effect will run. At this point of time, your effect will run. At this point of time, your effect will run. At this point of time, your effect will run. Okay, so these are the three cases where you can leverage use effect. Okay, so if you want to do some task when a certain piece of state changes, okay, or when you just want it to run every time, or here you want to run only once. Okay, so these three are the cases in which your use effect can be used. And I want to explain the actual use cases where you want to use it. So this empty array thing is usually used to get data. Okay, so what happens is This thing we also used in the IMDb clone also, that as soon as UI is rendered, I want to get the data, actual data, so that I can fit it into the UI from the TMDB API. So getting data from the backend, it is used for this. Okay. Next, next here, when we want to have some certain things like as soon as my user comes online, then I have to talk to my backend. Okay, so it is conditional. It is seldomly used, yeah. Okay, so this is the worst way of using use effect. Okay, but use effect is not just these three things. Okay, there is one more thing, one more place for use effect also. When I did not removed, when I did not commented the strict mode, you saw that use effect usually executes two times. Okay, if I just go over here, my use effect example, where it is, use effect example, where it is, here it is. Ah, so if I come to this guy, or yes, this guy. Okay, I just told you that it is going to execute only once in its lifetime. Let me just reload it. Your effect ran two times. So it's not a bug, it is their way of telling that there is something more to use effect. Okay, so usually you use effect to talk to a third party thing. Okay, so let me just go to its documentation, so that will give you a real life examples also. Use effect, React docs. Okay, not these ones. I just want to go to beta.react docs. Let me just increase the size of it also, so that you will be easily able to see the things. Okay, if I go to the references, if I go to my use effect, then let's just go to some of the places where I can use it. Okay, uh, like choose a chat room, general. Okay, like these things. If I want to, what is happening to it? I was talking. Huh. So let's just come here. If I want to just do a zoom level, okay, things like this. If I click on something and I just need to get the data from the backend, okay, in these kinds of things, use vector use fetching data. Some One of the easiest use cases where you can use it is was something here is like when you have to play some videos. Okay, it is where use effect is used, because what happens is, unless your video is on the UI, you can't play or pause it. So that is one way of using it. And the point where I want you to explain is the third thing, that why we had uh, two effect over here. Okay, effect is executed two times, because it wants to tell you that there may be something else to it. Okay, the thing is that you usually use effect when either you have to talk to a third party API, you want to do connecting to a database. Okay, so these kinds of things. So you usually, what we need to do is, you as once you have connected to a database, you have to disconnect also. Once you have to make a request, you got the data, you don't need to do that again if the data remains the same. Okay, so these kind of things could be easily covered inside the use effect also, because before executing the next time. Okay, your use effect also have a cleanup function. So inside the use effect, inside that function that you are using, you can return a function, and it is known as cleanup. So majorly it is used when you either have to undo the thing that you have done using use effect. Okay, so inside the development thing, if I just reload it, you can see how it works. your effect will run. After that, your cleanup will run. And after that, your effect will run. Okay, so let's just see in different context. If I let's just say this function connects with some backend database. Okay, so now what would happen is, just clear it out, that it is going to connect to my database, and it is going to after connecting, it will going to disconnect. Okay, and it is going to connect again because there is some issue with the React. And to solve that, we can easily use our remove the strict mode so that you can easily see it. So now you can only see connect is being executed because is going to where it is use effect. Yes, because this return function will only run before the next execution of use effect. Okay, so you can see this in action over here easily also. So if I am going to comment this piece of thing, and if I'm going to uncomment this thing, I can do this over here also. So whenever account is going to take change, then before running the first effect, it is going to next effect, it is going to run the cleanup. Okay, the last thing was cleanup. Reload it. So your effect ran. Okay, let me just click on the increment because it depends on the count. So render ran, and before running the effect, your cleanup ran. So if you have to do something around, uh, you have to do something around uh, disconnected thing. At that point of time, you will be using cleanup. Okay, so use effect is done. Now moving on. Now our use effect is done. Let's just move to the next thing that is also very important. That is our useRef. Okay, so let's see how we can use our useRef to accomplish this thing. Okay, so major use case of useRef is the use case that we are usually going to use is majorly they are used to get a DOM element and to do certain things that are not possible using the state variable. Let's see how we can do it. Okay, so for this I will be creating another component, use ref example dot jsx. Okay, just do a simple rsc and let me import it into app.js. So use ref example, and I go inside of it. Let's just take a case of normal input. Okay, so input type text, and I want to enclose it into empty fragments. Okay, when it comes to handling its values, I can easily do it. Okay, how can I be doing it? Simple, a state variable would work. Use state. Uh, hmm, and I can just easily get my variable over here also using use state. Just an empty would also work. Okay, now coming over to here, value equals to simple val. Okay, so here what I can do, I can easily just also have to have a setter function, and that e and e dot target dot value is required. Okay, so now I just need to set using set val. Okay, so now I can easily type it over here. I can easily type it over here, so there would be no issues. Okay, but what if I want to do something like this? I have a button that could bring focus to it. Okay, so what does focus mean? like when you click on it, it become highlighted now, so that is focus. Okay, so to do these kind of thing, if I click on it, it should be able to focus on my element. Focus input. So I want to have a function that could help me focus on that input. So how we are going to do it? That is the issue. Because if I want to display a text or alert the text, I can easily do it. How I am able to do it? I can just easily get it using my state variable. That's why we use state variable. Okay. So when I click on it, I just want to simply alert the content. Alert the content, and I want to empty it. Set val will be empty. So with this, I can easily alert content. I can simply alert it over here. Okay, but how am I going to focus on this thing? Because it is not talking about any content. Okay, so for that, there is a hook name useRef. With useRef, you can create the variables that hold the same reference across renders. Or in other word, with the help of useRef, you can hook it to a DOM element. Or in this case, I can hook it to an input element. So let's see how we can do it. So first of all, let's just create a ref variable, and initially how you usually use, you just pass null. Okay, and to attach it to any element, just do this thing, ref is equal to ref variable. With this guy now points to this input. So using this variable, now I can access this input, and I can change its properties, any property I want. Okay, so whenever I want to type or want to focus on it, I can simply directly do ref var dot current is a property. Current means this input. Okay, dot anything that I want that is available on this DOM element, any functionality that is available would be with me. If I want to alert it, I can do it using normal state, but that is not achievable. So sometimes I have to use the ref thing. So ref is majorly used when you have to access the DOM. So whenever you have to do something like animation and all those things, then at that point of time, you will be using your ref. Okay. So if you people have any issue, you can ask me, or we can go ahead. Okay. So now, moving on, let's just take some examples so that we can understand it in a better way. Okay, so with refs, there are very good examples that are given in the official documentation. So I'm just sharing those use cases with you people. Okay, so just saw it today only, and I love those examples. Are sincerely, yes, these are some of the examples. First is the focus one, that helps you focus. Second is if you want to scroll an image into view. So Tom is the cat, the first cat, Maru is the second, Jalobaram is the third one. Okay. And like playing and pausing video, you need to get that element, and then you can play or pause it. Okay, or you can just send it to other elements also. Okay, so this is a advanced use case, but as of now, if you want to have animations, you want to work with the DOM element, and that does not have any context with the content. Okay, with the content you can easily work with state, but if you want to work with the element, okay, like input is one such example where you have to where you have to change some functionality of that input, or for the video, for the audio. So for these kinds of things, like animation is not content. So for these kinds of use cases, you will be using ref. Okay, so that is the whole use case. Okay, now our use ref is done. Now let's just move ahead, and let's just cover the edge case for use state. Okay, discover our edge case for use state. Let's just come over here and just go over here, and this is usually asked in an interview. So as of now we have covered our use state for simple state management, use reducer for complex state management, majorly for the forms. Third, use effect for working with different things, like if you want to connect to the third party API, majorly there it is used. And if you want to do something when a state changes, okay, some extra thing that you want to do, like if a element is removed, at that point of time you want to send a log to your backend. So at that point of time, use effect is used. So there were three versions of use effect. First, without any dependency array that will run on every render. Second, with an empty dependency array that will run only once. And the third, that will uh, render execute the first time and uh, execute every time whenever your dependency state variable changes. Okay, and apart from that, we had there cleanup function. This function that you can return from the current function is known as cleanup function, and uh, this will run before the next use effect execution. Okay, so that is the whole thing. Now our use effect is done, and our use state is done, reducer is done, use ref is done. The four important things are done. Okay, let's just cover the rest of the things. What is happening to it? Why it is having an error? I think there is a bug with one node. Okay, no worries. So now use effect is done, state is done, our ref is also done. Let's just talk a bit about our memoization. Okay, so okay, before memoization, I just forget that we had to cover these things also, like the edge case for use state. Okay, so let's just cover that part also. So edge case for use state would be, I should add it into a different thing, use state edge case dot jsx. And for every one of you, I would recommend to go to the newer documentation, that is beta.reactjs.org. If you want to learn React in 2023, then I would recommend this documentation. It is far better, and it teaches you according to how a developer learns practically. Okay, so in that way, it helps a lot. Okay, and it also tells you tells you most of the corner cases ahead. Okay, so use reducer edge case, yes. You should edge case, yes. I just want to have a basic counter application that I had over here. Just so use state edge case. So this is usually asked in your interviews. Okay, so what I'm doing over here is, whenever a button is clicked, at that point of time I am using set count. Okay, and I'm also using use effect, and that use effect is doing nothing but it is calling a method that, and its name is set interval. Set interval is basically a DOM API function. It is not part of JavaScript, and with this what you can do is you can just simply update your state. Okay, so if I just do something like uh, 5 500 milliseconds, okay, and I want to do something like set count plus 1. Let me just do it. Okay, let's just go over here, just check it out if this works or there. Okay, so use state edge case. So if I come over here, if I open the localhost file, which is not defined, just add it over here also. Use effect. Use state, and I just don't want to do it because with this there would be a lot of issues. So now what you can see, let me just load it again. 0 1. Okay, it is one only. But what I have done is, if you can see the whole code very carefully, okay, it is just at one. And if I, even if I do 1 2 3, it is having an issue. Okay, so every time whenever you have to increment your state using the previous state, always use a different way of setting your state. That is, by default you also get a simple callback function. Okay, so you should always be updating your state using this. Okay, so I think now it works like a charm. And if I come back here and if I reload the code, now you will be easily able to see that it is at one. And if I do something like 1,000, it is having issues. So whenever you are using the previous state, then always do it in a callback way. Okay, so that is the edge case. If I reload it, now it will work perfectly. Hmm. Okay, huh. So today we cover state, and in state we covered use state and use reducer. Okay, these were the two ways to work with state. To work with DOM, you need to use useRef. To work with different type of third party libraries using while your React application is working, that is known as effect. So for that you have to use useEffect. So I think that's all in this session.